get away from church. But anyway, it's a good job. And I kind of gained weight because you're eating on the road and stuff. So I thought, I better do some yoga, get in shape. So I don't know if you remember Rod Masterson in Yoga College of India on Essen Lane, I think it is. No, not Essen. Starring. Well, not starring. Yeah, okay, you don't need to know, it's gone now. But it's hot yoga, you know, so I did that for a year and it was great. I was in such great shape, I felt so good. It's like all my troubles just disappeared. Wow, this works so good, maybe I should do some meditation. I heard of that. Although the transcendental meditation always costs $300 and I actually want to get involved. So one day, and I'm going to grad school at LSU in the 80s, I see a flyer in the Union system. And I was reading a book by Paramahansa Yogananda called Biography of Yogi, which I highly recommend. It's a good read and very interesting. So, and he mentioned Kriya Yoga. He practiced, and I said, okay, that sounds really good. So I see this flyer in the Union. His Holiness Sri Ganapati Satchidananda Swamiji of Mysore, India, and Celestial Message Troop is going to have a concert and Kriya Yoga classes, $90. I'm like, could pass that up, right? So I go to the first event, which was at a local devotee's house, Indian gentleman, and their house. And so there was an invitation to come to a welcome. So I go there and it says hearty welcome on the door, so I feel a little comfortable about that. And I go in and there's some people sitting around and we wait a while. There's a fire in the background, some ritual going on. I had no idea. Swamiji comes out and sits down on the couch and somebody gives him a flower and he has like a shoebox top or something and he goes like this and the flower disintegrates into holy ash. I'm looking at this, I'm saying, okay, that's different. And then he takes it and he blows it all around the room. And it's fragrance. So I thought, well, that's a very interesting experience. Anyway, I took the yoga class and Kriya Yoga and been practicing that since 1988. Swamiji has come back to Baton Rouge to visit a few times. And in the process, I went to India a few times, which delayed my master's degree, but I don't want to get too much into the details. But anyway, so a lot of interesting things. But after that was 1988. 1995, there's an event in June. It's called Guru Purnima Day, and it's all over India. Any guru will have it's a special day for gurus. So we had a function here in Baton Rouge, and it was we filmed it and everything, took video. And after that, at that point, there were so many people turning out. Swami decided, we'll build a temple here in Baton Rouge, and that was when that idea came up. So, got the temple, so people got together, people made donations, found a place, and so that took 2 years to actually develop, and I was involved. You know, I'd been there, and I was actually secretary of the Datta Yoga Center, which was this organization. We had places in, there was one place in Pennsylvania, a center, and then a small rural place. Then some devotees in Chicago, some devotees in California. But it's grown tremendously, just the following, also in India. Okay, well that's enough because, you know, I can't talk about Swamiji. I cannot explain who Swamiji is. He's a guru, self-realized guru. You have to see him yourself, so I'm not going to fall into that trap. Okay, what I would like to do is show a historical video. It's 13 minutes long. Don't try to get all the details, just get the gist of it. And we will, I'll just let it play because it takes less time for just the narration to play. And one thing I want you to notice is that the time frame for the birth of Hinduism, the Vedic age, is 1500 BC to about 500 BC. And that time frame coincides with Moses and the Exodus. So it's really amazing to me that not only was the ancient world connected with trade and also cultural sharing, but also time frame, the way things have developed, it's a certain age. The axial age is considered, 600 to about 1,000. That's the birth of Buddhism, Judeo-Christian ideas. So it's interesting that sort of time frame is universal in a way. Okay, John, go ahead and play it. And it's 13 minutes. Hope it's not boring, but Dr. Dan Brown is going to give some more details on Dharma and how Hindus practice Dharma. So that's going to be mentioned.
The very earliest complex societies in South Asia began with the Harappan culture of the Indus Valley, an advanced civilization contemporaneous with or earlier than Sumer. Knowledge of Harappan society is limited because the writing has not been deciphered, and many potential archaeological sites are below the water table and cannot be excavated. There is evidence that Neolithic societies flourished in the Indus Valley between 8,000 and 5,000 BCE. By 3,000, dark-skinned Dravidian people established communities in the Indus Valley. Dravidians made clothing from cotton textiles, and Harappan society extended over 1,000 miles along the Indus River. Settlements were connected culturally through trade and building styles, and long-distance trade was carried on by both sea and land with Persia, Mesopotamia, and even Egypt. Mohenjo-Daro, at its height, from 2,500 to 2,000 BCE, had about 40,000 inhabitants and must have resembled Mesopotamian and Egyptian cities in the variety of craft specializations and differentiation between social classes. Yet it had no pyramids, royal palaces, or grand tombs, no evidence of kingship. There is evidence, however, of internal political authority within the cities, supported by taxes collected in grain. By about 1900 BCE, environmental degradation began to take its toll. Reduced rainfall hurt crops, and deforestation eroded the topsoil. There was a huge demand for heating ovens in which mud bricks were baked for building materials. The Indus River also flooded erratically, and dikes were built along with irrigation systems which probably had the same effect as in Mesopotamia, increased waterlogging and salinization of the soil. The drastic decline in crop yields led to a subsistence crisis, military weakness, and conquest, much like in the case of Sumer. Nevertheless, Harappan culture survived through transmission to other societies, particularly its religious, agricultural, and urban traditions. By 1500 BCE, Indo-Aryans, that South Asian wave of Indo-European migrants, passed through the mountains of the Hindu Kush and began to spread out in the Indus Valley region. This didn't constitute an organized invasion, but rather an intermingling with remnants of the Harappan society. The fusion of Aryan and Dravidian cultures gave rise to one of the world's great religions, Hinduism, or what can be called Vedic religion because of its birth in the Vedic age between 1500 and 500 BCE. What began as an Aryan religion of conquest centered around a nature god, Indra, was changed by Dravidian culture to become a philosophy of spiritual liberation, supported by discipline and the practice of yoga. Hinduism is very likely an Aryan reflection of Dravidian concepts, including reincarnation and moksha, that is, the liberation of the eternal soul from the cycle of rebirths. Aryan pastoral nomads may have clashed with settled communities at times, but they also intermarried and maintained friendly relations with the Dravidians, and they adopted Dravidian culture. The Aryans had no written language when they arrived in India, but they had preserved an oral tradition of Sanskrit songs, poems, and rituals. The earliest known collection, the Rig Veda, was compiled between 1400 and 900 BCE, and finally written in 600 BCE. Three later Vedas, the Samar Veda, Yajur Veda, and Atharva Veda, were derived largely from the Rig Veda and compiled for priestly and medicinal uses. The latter contains the principles of Ayurvedic medicine. Veda means knowledge, especially of the priestly functions and rituals. The Aryans performed ritual sacrifices of animals to appease the gods, and they drank soma, a hallucinogenic beverage, in order to experience the divine power within. Around 800 BC, a more mystical approach to religion arose alongside and in opposition to the mechanical routine of ritual. Aryan mystics retreated into the forest and absorbed Dravidian teachings about the immortal soul and reincarnation. From this came the Upanishads, which taught that all beings are part of a universal soul or Brahman. The goal was to merge with Brahman, the only true reality, and escape the cycle of birth and rebirth. Samsara means the ocean of illusion into which reincarnated beings are born, and the world of the senses and the ego. A soul can advance or regress in the journey across this ocean of samsara through karma, through good or bad actions. A karmic merit or debt follows a soul through successive rebirths and has to be paid off before liberation or moksha can be attained. Saints achieve moksha and never get reincarnated. Gurus purposely return to guide others to the path of liberation. Yoga is the discipline through which a soul can advance. Most people think the physical practice of Hatha Yoga is the only one, but there are 8 types. The 3 most commonly referred to are Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge, Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion, and Karma Yoga, the path of right action. The key concept is detachment from the material world.
During the Axial Age, and more than a millennium later, to be Indian was to be a Hindu. This would change around 1000 CE with the influx and invasion of Islamic empires. Hinduism and Indian culture embraced the same general values and ideals: belief in reincarnation, the transmigration of souls, belief in the sacredness of the Vedas and cows, and the caste system. Hinduism is primarily characterized by the worship of Vishnu and Shiva, respectively the preserver and destroyer, which means the destroyer of sins and evils. This blend of religion and cultural identity persists right up to the present, even though up to 1948, 1/3 of the Indian population was Muslim. Since the creation of Pakistan, it's now closer to 15%. Hinduism is primarily characterized by the worship of Vishnu and Shiva age, respectively the society had become priest-dominated, which means the destroyer of cultures and evil, which animal sacrifice had actually. This blend of religion and
I just wanted to mention, that idea of samsara. If you're reading the New Testament and some of the things Jesus Christ is saying, he's saying very much the same thing. This world is illusion, it's wicked. You need to follow the path of God. I'm sent by God to bring that path, that to you. And the same thing is in the Bhagavad Gita. That Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, and it's a war, and he's saying, things have gotten so bad that I had to come to bring Dharma back. So there's a lot of parallels. And I will just say, in Matthew chapter 6, I don't think I'm a biblical scholar or anything, but I just noticed that Christ is saying, don't make a pretense of your religious faith. In other words, don't show it off. Pray secretly to God, and that's when you're going to get the true benefit. And that's exactly what the Bhagavad Gita says in one of the chapters. I'm not going to tell you which one, but I have seen it. It's only, we can just skip this because Dan's going to cover this information. Maybe the next slide is okay. We had to transfer and I don't know what happened.
gods continued to be worshipped, but were increasingly seen as part of worldly existence and form. One should strive through contemplation to recognize the unchanging infinite behind or beneath transitory existence, was the message. This was difficult while being immersed in the world of illusion, but the Upanishads taught that the physical world was not real, happiness was not real. The key to liberation from the cycle of birth and death was self-realization, realizing or experiencing the connection between the immortal self, the Atman, with the eternal Brahman. So how does one deal with samsara, or the world of illusion? First, through dharma, or accepting one's duties or responsibilities in life and acting morally. This means avoiding bad actions or bad karma in everyday life. There's a second way, through non-action or renouncing ordinary life and becoming a monk, a hermit, wanderer, or yogi. This second way, known as the extraordinary norm, involved transcending bodily experience through yoga, self-denial, or even self-torture. Many Kshatriya warriors and elites sought moksha in this way.
After Aryan-ruled societies had spread beyond the Indus Valley around 800 BCE, several large states founded empires, but none of them lasted long enough to consolidate centralized rule on the level of Persia, China, or Rome. Persian, then Greek intrusions into the Hindu Kush had established a region subject to foreign conquerors, but when Alexander's forces mutinied, he left a power vacuum. And this was filled by the expanding kingdom of Magadha, a rich agricultural region in the Ganges Valley. High point of the Mauryan Empire was reached under the rule of Ashoka, who reigned from 268 to 232 BC. Ashoka set up stone pillars on which he inscribed edicts, and these largely promoted Buddhist values. Ashoka practiced toleration and projected himself as a just, legitimate ruler. In contrast to sprawling, multicultural Persia, Ashoka could appeal directly to the established patterns of Aryan Hinduism and Buddhist doctrine, things like the caste system, the emphasis on piety, and ahimsa, non-injury of living beings. I'll read some excerpts from Ashoka's rock edicts, pictured here, and they underscore the homogeneity of classical Indian culture. Respect for animals. On one of the edicts it says, 26 years after my coronation, various animals were declared to be protected. Parrots, ruddy geese, wild ducks, bats, queen ants, terrapins, boneless fish, tortoises, porcupines, squirrels, deer, bulls, wild asses, wild pigeons, domestic pigeons, all four-footed creatures that are neither useful nor edible. Nanny goats, ewes, and sows which are with young and giving milk to their young are protected, so are the young ones less than 6 months old. He even says that husks-hiding living beings, like insects, are not to be burnt, and forests are not to be burnt either without reason or to kill creatures. One animal is not to be fed to another. You can see the distribution of these rock edicts all around the periphery of his Mauryan Empire. And he created a lot of roadside facilities and routes for merchants. He's saying he does it for the purpose of Dharma, so people can make pilgrimages to holy sites. Buddhism received support from Ashoka, as we've seen. He also gave land grants to monasteries, built new monasteries and stupas. We see one pictured here. These stupas housed relics for the masses. While Buddhism was becoming more popular, Hinduism itself was becoming more a religion of salvation. Older Brahmanic ritual traditions held less sway than lessons transmitted through the Mahabharata and Ramayana, and these two epics were committed to writing during the first 2 centuries of the Common Era. We talked about the Ramayana already, about Rama and Sita, and it promoted the ideal husband and wife and the virtues of loyalty and triumph of good over evil. The Mahabharata concerned a civil war between 2 related clans in northern India, and the story contains tales of different kings and the birth and heroics of Krishna. While Buddhism was becoming more popular, Hinduism itself was becoming more a religion of salvation. Before the older Brahmanic ritual traditions held less sway than lessons transmitted from the Mahabharata, because Ramayana not die to it.
Sorry about that. You're going to cover that a little bit more. That's what that the Bhagavad Gita was this. It was this pause in the war where Arjuna he's a warrior caste, so it's his duty to fight, even though he's got to fight against his own kin, people he respected, teachers and so on. And he's at first he's very disconsolate about that. And Krishna, who is there, the charioteer, says, of course, this is the key book in the Vedas, the Mahabharata, is saying, you have to do your warrior duty. Their souls are going to persist, even if their physical body dies. They themselves are not dying. So this is another reality. Just disregard the physical reality. Do your duty. But it's a vehicle for talking about all different types of yoga, whether it's Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and each of the chapters is a number of slokas that it's in verse form that edify, that reveal the basis of that. And some of the things we've been hearing from the other presenters about Buddhism, about Islam, is that even though there are some strict kind of rules to follow and so on, that even the most adamant sinner, if they're sincere in their love of God and their consideration of God and atonement and so on, are saved. And that is also in the Bhagavad Gita. So there are all these yogas, but the basic thing is always have your mind on God, concentrate, just do your best. And there's always room for improvement, of course. And so, you can go on. I think the last slide is just about, if that's the next one. No, the one after the one that's
The Hindu ethical system balanced the effort to attain moksha, or spiritual liberation, with the aims of worldly life, dharma, family duties, Also, the similarities between Krishna and Christ extend to more than just the sound of the name. It appears that early Christian missionaries in the Malabar region on the west coast of India, possibly during the late 2nd century, can be associated with a devotional bhakti movement that began to depict Krishna as a divine savior. This is the message of the Puranas written between the 4th and 6th centuries Common Era, which feature episodes of Krishna's life reminiscent of the biblical account of Jesus: birth in a prison instead of a stable, the persecution by a wicked king, Kamsa, instead of Herod. The older Krishna of the Gita reflects Aryan concerns with caste obligations as well as Vedic notions of reincarnation. Krishna reveals himself to Arjuna in a terrifying vision of the universe of all creatures, innumerable eyes, mouths, and limbs. So the transition from the fearsome Krishna to divine child savior probably owed something to cultural transmission.
So believe it or not, there are Paramahansa Yogananda, who I mentioned, the autobiography of Yogi, has written 2-volume, 2,000-word thesis or work on the connections between Hinduism and Christianity, and this idea that where was Christ after birth, and that's what we read about in the Bible, and then we read about the full-grown Christ preaching and traveling and performing miracles. What was his youth like? What was his experience? And their thesis is that he traveled to India, met with masters, perfected his yoga, and came back. It's called the Yoga of Christ. There's a smaller book that sort of gives the synopsis of that. But his guru, Sri Yukeshwar, did a lot of research on that and came up with some amazing correlations between what Christ was saying and what's also in Hindu tradition. So that's just another factor that, who knows? Maybe there were more connections that we know about. Or maybe those ideas are just sort of inherent to all religions and they're expressed in a slightly different way. So I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Dan Rao. He's going to give some more details on Dharma.
Yes. Oh, okay. From there. Well, thank you all very much, and it's really an honor to meet you all and be with you all this evening. I really love the concept that you have all worked on to open up your doors to hear from others. We are all the same, and that's the fundamental philosophy of Hinduism. So the Islam gentleman who came to speak about Islam declared you all as Muslims, and today I declare you all as Hindus, including family. Well, I had to rush from New Orleans. I had a meeting. I barely made it to this meeting today, so I'm still recovering from that. Actually, Hinduism is a much more recent terminology. Ism part. The term Hindu comes from the river Sindh that flows in that area from north to south, including the Pakistan, West Pakistan. And in some languages, Sindh became Hind, and Hindus who lived alongside the river became Hindus. That's how the term, that's a much more recent terminology. The original religious philosophy was called Sanatana Dharma. That's the true name of the religion coming out of India, if you like. And many of the original Indian folks, like me, were born there and brought up. That's what I mean, the original Indian. I actually prefer the term Sanatana Dharma. That actually describes the religion much better than Hinduism, quite frankly. And it's really the philosophy of all philosophies of Hinduism are incorporated in there. So that's the meaning of that. Sanatana, the first word means eternal. Dharma is a righteous conduct or duty. I think that's good. Thanks. I'm a professor of engineering at LSU. I'm not a priest. My knowledge is fairly limited of the deep religious concepts, but I'm a practicing Hindu right from my birth. and my parents were too. So that's why I need the help of slaves. He emphasizes the timeless nature and the universal truths embedded in there. The key concepts, I think William described it very well. The Atman, Brahman, Karma, and Moksha. These are the four concepts. The soul, I will come to that in a little bit here. There are three different philosophers who expounded on these concepts, and each one differ from each other slightly differently. So I'll come to that in a minute. Again, this I think William has already covered some of this stuff, so I don't want to repeat what he has already said. The fundamental faith is that there is one ultimate reality known as Brahman, which William mentioned, who is infinite, eternal, and unchanging. That's the truth. All other aspects of reality, including the physical world and individual selves, are manifestations of that true reality. One of the key beliefs of Sanatana Dharma is the concept of karma, which states that our actions have consequences and determine our future experiences. And I think Taylor Swift has a song on karma as well. My son-in-law, when I told him about my talk here, he sent it to me, the lyrics. There in Houston. The ultimate goal of life is to achieve moksha, the final one that you saw up there. Moksha really means liberation from the cycle of birth and death. So that's another fundamental beliefs of Hindus, is that reincarnation is embedded in us from birth. You were somewhere else and you're here now, and you will go somewhere else. It is the body that dies, but not the soul. So the soul takes on different shapes over the years. And the belief is we have gone through, to become human beings, 840 life cycles before. 840,000 life cycles before. There is a number there. I don't know where this comes from. They have calculated the age of the universe into trillions of years. And with the same science, I believe, they also predict the lunar and solar eclipses even today, right to the last second. Don't ask me. I'm an engineer, I'm a scientist, I'm a researcher. I just never figured this out. How they do it. I don't. So ultimate goal of life is to get moksha, which is really the liberation from the cycle of birth and death. So to join the Almighty Lord who sent us here for a purpose. Each life has a purpose to fulfill. Is heaven equivalent to moksha? I think William had a slide on this, and I disagreed with him on this. No, Hinduism, heaven is one of the beautiful stages for the Atman, the soul, to reside in for a while for the good karmas done in the previous lifetimes. But that is not the liberation. After your good karmas, the rewards for the good karmas are done, you come back again. You take another life form. That's again our belief. There are proofs of this, and there are TV series. I forget the name of that. I think Life After Death or something. There are a whole bunch of series, and it's amazing experiences of North American folks who have spoken about the concept of rebirth and all that. But the moksha is beyond the heaven. That means you never come back. It's once and for all. Once you reach that stage, you become one. Your soul becomes one with the Mahatma. Atma is the soul. Mahatma is the greatest soul of all, is the Brahman. You become one with it. It's like rivers flowing into the ocean. They never come back. They become part of the ocean. That's the usual example given to that. While heaven represents the temple, I already said that. The moksha signifies a state of complete union with the divine, transcending the concept of heaven and its limitations. Limitation being, once your good deeds are rewarded, how much reward do you want? Once your rewards are done, you go back. That's our concept of heaven, which is called Swarga, by the way. There's a beautiful term for it in Sanskrit called Swarga, which means exactly what it is, heaven. So the Vedas, I think William covered this. Maharishi Vyasa wrote it, recited it. For ages they came down from word of mouth to the disciples from the Guru and so on. And then eventually was written and gave the dates as well. The Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, Sama Veda and Atharvana Veda. I'll skip over this because, and there are reasons for this, and that's the oldest one, the Rig Veda. Most of the others, some of the others and most of the other Puranas and several other written down literature of Hinduism borrow significantly from this Rig Veda. And when I do worship in the morning, it takes about half an hour after shower every morning, I do recite some of these shlokas that come out of this Rig Veda. There are Upavedas, meaning subdivisions of the Vedas. And I just wanted to point out that Ayurveda is a medicinal thing. It's the science of medicine described in there. Gandharva Veda is music and dance, art, science. It's a school of arts, if you like, arts and science. Dhanur Veda is the warfare. So warfare was also considered and described in there at the time. Shilpa Veda is the architecture. So they were written down documentation of these things over the thousands of years ago. So the three prominent Hindu philosophers that I mentioned a little earlier, Shankaracharya in the 8th century, Ramanuja in the 12th century, and Madhvacharya in the 13th century. All three of them are from southern part of India. Shankaracharya was from Kerala, and Ramanuja was from Tamil Nadu, and Madhvacharya is from my state, where I come from, is Karnataka. All three are southern states. But being in 8th century, Shankaracharya philosophy has took hold of most of India. And there is a lot of, there are millions that believe in this. And I do believe in this philosophy of Madhvacharya, not because he came and spoke my language, but also because my family, for ages, my family has been following his philosophy. Shankara says the Atma, the soul in us, is identical to the ultimate reality. It's identical. It was modified significantly. He had a tremendous influence to bring back Hinduism. Shankaracharya did. It was dying out and he survived. He revived it. Whereas Ramanuja came 400 years later almost and said, well, it's not quite identical, but it has connections. It's like sparks coming out of the sun. The sun is ever burning and we are just little sparks of it. That's the connection. His connection is still there. That's what his philosophy was. Madhvacharya, on the other hand, said it's a Dvaita philosophy. In fact, in most of the pictures that we paint, probably, I don't think there are any pictures of him actually, he sits like this with his right hand showing two, Atma and Paramatma. So they are different. Soul and the ultimate soul, the Paramatma, are two different things. So we can strive to become one with the God, but will never be God. So that was his take on life, human life. These are the yogas that William mentioned. Also, Karma Yoga, the yoga of action, everyday action. Yoga means it's a union of the body and mind, union of mind and intellect, union of intellect with the Brahman, the God. So yoga really means that. And that's what, and then the one of these not really staggered like this in our understanding, but Jnana Yoga is the yoga of knowledge. But by learning more about God, you can strive to become one with Him. Raja Yoga is also sort of meditation based. Bhakti Yoga, Krishna declares in Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Yoga is the easiest for us. It's the path of devotion. Devotion to the concept of God, devotion to God, devotion to his teachings and following his teachings. I'm sure these are very, very common concepts to all religions. So, but they're just called slightly different. Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Raja Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. These are the yoga that we call actually here in Western world or even in India called asanas. Asana is just 8 limbs of, I think William mentioned these, yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Samadhi is the ultimate. That's where you mingle with the Lord, essentially. Your soul mingles with the Lord. Asanas are really the yoga that's called in here actually is actually nothing but asanas only. The body postures are called asanas. Yeah, I don't know, I think I'm exceeding my time here. I want to leave some time for questions also. The same are explained here. I'll leave these slides. They are already on your computer, so you can share them with everyone. They are explained here in more detail. Mother, father, teacher, spouse, siblings and friends, they come right up to here. Yama and Niyama. Purity, devotion, contentment, truthfulness, non-stealing, non-violence, and so on. And right up there is samadhi, is enlightenment. You go through, so various gurus come along the lifetime to teach us various parts of this. And what here described these sections, conquering, bahiranga sadhana means external conquest. Antaranga sadhana, internal conquest. Antaratma sadhana, innermost conquest. Vanishing the difference between your Atman and the Parabrahma is the final stage. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, again, I guess we talked about that. So again, here, this is where the fundamental openness of Hinduism comes here. The paths up a mountain, there could be innumerable paths, but the peak is only one. So we are all aiming to reach the peak. It doesn't matter, you come from this side, that side. We prefer to take an easier path. And Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Yoga is for the common person. Bhakti, the devotion. Knowledge of what and how long? I mean, if you walk into a library, I'm a retiring professor, pretty soon I'll be retiring, and I've read a lot, and I've written a lot too, I've tried to. I walk into a library, I feel dumbfounded. So there's so much more to learn. So knowledge of what will get me there? So these are questions that arise. Karma. What are the deeds? How many deeds can I make? Good deeds in life to attain that ultimate success. There is no limit to this. Bhakti, on the other hand, is subservient, servant of the Lord. I am here, use me as you like. I had a recent argument with one of my very good friends. Not an argument, we were a group discussion like this one. And he was saying, I want moksha. And I was wondering, why do you want moksha? The ultimate status. This life has been so good to us. God has given us this good life, human life, where I can do so many good things. I don't mind coming back 1,000,000 more times, as long as He keeps me in His path and gets me to do. So that was kind of a funny, friendly argument we were having. But that speaks to the openness of Hinduism. All paths are included. So what is that personal inclination? That you have a certain way of doing things. I like this, I don't like this. That sort of thing comes from these gunas. These are the fundamental beliefs of Hinduism. Is guna means it's a quality or attribute. And we have sattva guna. I think I should read these. These sattva, rajas and tamas. The quality of goodness, harmony, balance, purity. It is associated with light, peacefulness, and creativity. Sattva guna. We all have, by the way, we all have all three of them. Rajas is the quality of passion, activity, and movement. It is associated with stimulation, drive, and egoism. My ego, I want to be this, that drives me to do certain things. That is passion. Whereas tamas You don't want to have too much of this. The quality of ignorance, inertia, and laziness, it is associated with darkness, delusion, and negativity. And I'm sure, you belong to that category.
Yes.
Well, I think, it's philosophical angle of this, and then in the yoga participation, practitioners can see whether they're moving forward or not by being aware of these gunas. Even in nature, we see these three gunas. The entire nature is composed of three gunas, these gunas. And so Bhagavad Gita goes into extensive explanation of these gunas and how they influence our lives and thinking and so on in various chapters. And how do these gunas, again I leave these slides with you all. Please take a look, and I think I should open it up for questions. We don't have time.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you give an example of a teneg food, a negative food?
May not like to answer.
Well, don't tell me something I don't know.
Spoiled food.
Spoiled food, garlic. That's what I'm saying. You may not like it. onion, garlic. Some of these. Rajasic, I had a word file on a list of these things, but I don't have access to it right now. But sattvic sweets are sattvic food. Sattvic is sweets.
Thank you.
I love
Makes me feel
sweets
better.
too.
No. That's all I got on the last slide.
In Christianity, Christ is our authority, if I can use that term. Is there a parallel in Hinduism for an authority figure who sets the rules of what's moral and what's not, which determines your karma?
All the tough questions, William has.
I'll just mention, it just seems to me that, when you read the Bhagavad Gita,
Lord Krishna is speaking, so that's like the Bible, if you want to, it's equivalent in a sense. So that strikes me as being, the message strikes me as being very much the same thing. Ignore the physical world, wealth, and so on. That's okay in the physical world, but it's not important to God, it's not important to heaven, it's not important to your soul, to your spiritual advancement. And those same things are said, as far as I know, with Jesus Christ and also in Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. So,
Well, before Krishna was about 5,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago was Rama. So there have been characters, some of them mythological, some historical, some of the saints that have come down. That's why it's very easy for me as a born Hindu to accept Jesus. I have no problem with that at all, or Muhammad Paigambar. Because we have had innumerable human life form gurus who have done miracles one after the other. And every time I go to India, I make it a point to go to that one place where my wife and I are so happy to worship every day. Here, for years. And one of the, so it's not one person. Those are the three names I mentioned: Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, and Madhvacharya. They differ in their philosophy, but they are our gurus. And Shankaracharya, the 8th century. From then on, I think most of India believes in Shankaracharya philosophy. Aham Brahmasmi, the famous words in Sanskrit that come from India. You always hear about religious. I don't believe in that. But there are millions and millions who do. It says Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahma, I am the God. It sounds arrogant, but it's not, if you go into the depths of it. So that's why Madhvacharya in the 13th century said, I can never be Brahma, sort of thing. Yeah, I and him are different. Soul and Paramatma, so Atma and Paramatma are different. It goes on and on. So there are leaders, they have given us starts, but the ultimate authority, I think, that we are looking for is the Vedas. And they were written by Veda Vyasa, who was also a great sage. I can't put an age on it, but it was just several thousands of years ago. And so that's my best answer for your question.
How prevalent is the caste system today? Is it practiced a lot in America or in other places in the world?
No, I don't think it is practiced in America. I know there have been some stories circulating, these days on the multimedia, all kinds of stories circulating. I don't know how far they're true, how far they're false. But we don't practice that here, certainly not. Yes, it is there in India. I'm afraid it will take 10 Gandhis, Mahatma Gandhis, to eradicate that. Social changes are very hard to come by. So it is there, but the animosity towards one another, or the class action, I'm superior to you, or whatever, those have died out, almost dying out, I should say, but it's there.
The parallel to in the West is class, the three classes, clergy, rulers, or lords, and peasants. And there's a fourth class in the caste system that's merchants, which were in the West, but maybe came along later. But that's all probably evolved from the Indo-Europeans who spread out all over Europe and into India. I mean, that's kind
And in fact, Krishna talked about it in Bhagavad Gita. He says that. And the duties were exactly what you mentioned, those priests or Brahmins, that's my family background. And their duties are actually to educate the masses, not treat others down. And in fact, we are watching a series that was recorded recently, I think, but of the saint that I referred to, of the, I think it was the 16th century sage. It is an incredible, he blends this caste system back in the day. And so and there are, experts who have expounded on this quite a bit, saying how bad it is to treat someone badly. They all come from, according to Gita, Krishna is saying, from different bodies of the great Lord, if you like, with parts of the image of the God. They are all images of the God. And that is a fundamental belief, and people do believe that. That's why I think as education is expanding in the country, more and more people are getting educated. I think these differences are slowly dying out, but they are not dead yet.
But you can think of it as social class, maybe with more nuances than just economics, occupational, it evolved, still there, everywhere.
So we think Jesus said, "Be perfect as God is perfect," and I've come to think that he actually means that. So when he says, "Be perfect," it speaks to me, you can achieve it. And then I put that into my own being, and it says to me, low as you may be today, if you intend to perfect yourself, you can achieve it before death. Does, in other words, perfection of me. Does that make any sense in Hinduism?
Yes. Every minute, every second, you're supposed to be striving for moksha. Moksha is the ultimate, even beyond heaven. So if you are on that path, you are trying to be perfect. Every second of your lifetime, you are trying to be perfect. That's what the Vedas have dictated to us. How many of us strive for it? I don't know. That's a different question.
But there are difficulties too in having to look at the physical world as being unimportant. You know, it's just more of an obstacle than it is. No, you have to do good in the physical world if possible, but it's really a distraction, and that comes in through what I've read in the Bible, and it also comes through in the Bhagavad Gita. That's kind of a difficult thing, you know, to strive to be perfect is good, but it's going to take some relinquishing likes and dislikes, or maybe whatever, addictions or something. You know, if you like this candy too much, you know, that's an attachment. We talked about detachment. That's the key. Detachment from samsara, detachment from the physical, illusory world. And I mean, I'm just reading my Bible to look at what Christ says, and he's kind of saying that as far as I can tell. So maybe I'll catalog it more later. But whatever I've seen, he's saying this world has got problems. Do good, but don't become involved in it. And that's exactly what the Bhagavad Gita is saying.
Like Krishna's this famous statement, Karmanyeva adhikarasya mahapaleshu padachana. In Sanskrit it means Karmanyeva, you have the right to the action, but not the fruits of your action.
Right.
Leave the fruits to me. Lord
Right.
Krishna, Lord himself says that in Bhagavad Gita. So that's what, if you reach that stage where I will do, on the three gunas that I mentioned, Sattvika, you go 100% composed of Sattvika guna, Sattvika attributes. You're there, you're perfect. But all three of them, we all have, like I said, all three of those. It's the proportions that we differ in. One could have 90% Sattvika and 5 the other, or the other way around would be terrible. But that's the difference between each one of us. How much of Sattvika guna we have, how much of Rajasika, how much is Tamasika guna.
But the truth is that whatever you do, whatever work you put in, that's a gift, really. Whatever talents you have, we know those are gifts. But even the work you do, the capability to do it, the energy to do it, a gift. And if you just detach from the ego saying this is me, of course you have to copyright your work and so on in our world, but that still doesn't mean you can't detach from it.
I just wanted to mention one more thing if you have time. The reason I am very fond of Baton Rouge because, as William mentioned, there's the very first Datta temple here. When I got married 23 years ago, it was the same person. Her uncle, her mother's brother, may so rest in peace, is not with us anymore, and her mom is not there either. She passed away last year, 2 years ago. He gave me a book. This is a Sanskrit shloka, but written in Kannada language, which I can read and write. So he gave me the book. He said, you practice this. You say it every morning when you do your puja worship. And so I've been doing it for many years, 4 decades. And it's by heart by now. That was called the Datta Shloka. We were in Canada at the time, Calgary, Canada, cold place. And after 26 years there, after 20 years there, we moved here 26 years ago. But when I came to LSU, I asked one of my graduate students, is there a temple here? He says, yes, sir. Oh, where is that and what temple is it? He said, Datta temple. So 26 years later, the Lord listened to my prayers and brought me to a place where there is the only Datta temple, I think, in entire North America.
That's what I've heard. But we need to explain too who Datta is. Datta is a combination of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, so that appeals more to Christians or people like me who, I'm not a polytheist myself, so I'm thinking of the ultimate Brahman and God as the same thing, and that's what Bhagavad Gita says as well. So it's a convenient way, just to have all three together. Datta is the grantor of boons, both spiritual and physical. So if you chant, you chant the sloka, it's the prayer that you say. That's in it. So even if even if you enjoy eating some kind of food, you enjoy that, fine. You have that, but also you're still working toward moksha. You're still working toward spiritual growth and benefits. And so it's a very benign view of God.
And yoga, the asanas that I mentioned, yoga that's mentioned here, is also very important. The Atma, the soul, can only accomplish karma, do things through the body. So the body is a very important part in the process of the spiritual progress. That is recognized very much in there.
So that's why to do asanas is good.
We've got choir rehearsal that's starting next door now. So if y'all have other questions for the folks here, feel free to ask them individually. Just a quick reminder about next week. We're going to be hearing from Rabbi Mary Weinstein, who is Rabbi Emeritus at the Unified Jewish Synagogue here in town. So we'll be learning about Judaism. But in the meantime, feel free to stay, ask questions, and I know you that you will join me in thanking them, Dr. Rao, Dr. Bertolette, for sharing this.
Now, a question for you, John. Are you planning to continue this sort of discussion beyond the next week?
We would be glad to. This is the scope of what we've done right now in terms of these 4 or 5 it informs our own faith and makes us better human. Yes, yeah. Thank you all.
Asanas, those poses, but it's definitely it affects your whole
I gotta go. Okay.
It was another people around me. I had no idea.
Oh yeah. They really have it. How do I stop this? Just want to stop. Maybe I hit this. Oh, okay. Somebody is